Hello everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to briefly go over the election results from Kentucky. I'm filming this at, 10 o'clock on the East Coast. I'm going to just release this as soon as I'm done with it because I want to give you all an update. Andy Beshear, the Democratic incumbent governor of Kentucky, has been reelected, as you can see on my screen right now, with about 89% of the vote reporting. He's up by 4.8% over Dan Cameron. There's a gap here of around 61,000 votes. And it's been called by every network, NYT, as I have on your screen here, but also CNN, MSNBC, you name it. They have projected that Andy Beshear will be reelected as governor of Kentucky. So Beshear first won by 0.4% in 2019 against incumbent Republican Governor Matt Bevin. He is going to win by a lot more this time. Obviously, this is no blowout, but this is a pretty decisive victory for a Democrat in a state that Donald Trump won by 26 points last time, and it's by all means a really impressive showing. As you can see right here, if we kind of just zoom in on this map here and take a look at where Beshear's doing particularly well, the big blue dots on your screen, those are Louisville and Lexington, Jefferson County, where still have some votes left outstanding, so Beshear will still probably gain here with these other 22% of votes that haven't yet been tallied, but he's up by 44 points here. He's up by 44 points as well in Fayette County. That's where Lexington is. It's a bit smaller, but still very blue. And then you go to the other urban areas in the state, specifically Warren County, which is where Bowling Green is. It's, not a big, I wouldn't call it an urban area, but it's, one of the bigger population centers of the state. Obviously, Kentucky's a rural state, but still a lot of votes cast in Bowling Green every year. And Andy Beshear is edging out Daniel Cameron there. He's up by 4%. Beshear is. And then the final kind of area where Beshear is doing well is coal country. Elliott County is one of the most famous. If you know a lot about elections, if you really like to look at elections, you've been doing so for a while, you probably are familiar with Elliott County. It voted for Democrats for, I want to say, an 80, 90, 100-year streaks at some point that ended in 2016. Obama won the county by I think 20 points his first time, then narrowly carried it by like 3% against Romney in 2012. Then Trump won it, and then he won it by 50% in 2020. And then, again, this is not a very big county, as you can see here, only about, 1,500 votes cast. But Beshear won it back for the Democrats. There were coal miners. This is, like I said, it's part of coal country. There were coal miners here, working class, non-college educated voters, blue collar, who said, look, we like Trump, we're going to vote for Trump, and we're going to vote for other Republicans, right? Like you go to the, I believe, the attorney general race here, which Republicans have won. Russ Coleman won that by 18%. But for Beshear, he's the last Democrat they're going to vote for. So there are voters still out there who are, very, very conservative. They're going to vote for Donald Trump. They're going to vote for Republican candidates up and down the ballot. But for Andy Beshear, the popular incumbent governor, despite the fact he's a Democrat, they're going to vote for him. And this applies all across coal country. You see these smaller counties up here that are kind of light shades of blue. That's not really happening in the AG race or in the Secretary of State race. So as you can see, there was a lot of crossover. And you can just look at this from the top of margin result. Beshear's up by 5 in the governor race, but Democrats are down by 16 in the AG race, and they're down by 21 in the Secretary of State race. So I would say Beshear really demonstrated how popular he is. He's consistently had 60 to 65% approval ratings in the polls we've been getting. He was leading. I don't think he trailed in a single poll this year. Emerson today had him tied. He was at 47%. Cameron was at 47%. They showed a late surge, but no such surge has happened, and Beshear is going to win re-election here. So the one last thing I would do want to talk about, I've talked about where he did well, and I've talked about what the polls said and why I think he won. I think he was popular enough that Republicans, even if they are conservative, are going to vote for Republicans to other levels. They're happy to keep their governor. Because, again, people don't really want to change up their leadership when things are going right. If people like Beshear, they're going to vote for him. And obviously, he's getting 53% of the vote, and he had a 65% approval rating. So there's some people who like him who are going to vote for Cameron. But broadly, by and large, when a governor is popular, he doesn't lose. I've talked about this in my previous video, in the prediction video I made leading up to this race, where I said Beshear was going to win by, I think, 3. I think I said he'd win by 3. I said the last time a truly popular governor lost re-election was in 2016. And even then, that was Pat McCrory, who had a +1 net approval, +1, so he wasn't even that popular. He was the last governor who had a net positive approval rating consistently in every poll who lost. Since then, popular governors, they win, even if they're in states that are often against their party, right? Laura Kelly in Kansas last year, Democrat in a red state, popular enough, she got through. You go 2018, Republicans win Massachusetts, Vermont, Maryland, New Hampshire, all popular governors winning re-election in those states. So I would say this wasn't necessarily a shocking result because BESHEAR was popular and I predicted him to win, but it is pretty bad for Republicans. It is, I would say, an indictment of what they have done. And so that's the last thing I want to talk about here. It just updated again. We now have 92% of the vote, and it didn't really change here. 1.3 million votes cast, which is a pretty decent turnout for an off-year election. It's not amazing, obviously, but 1.3 million votes in a smaller state. It's not bad. It could be worse. Either way, though, let's talk about the final element of this race, which I think was Republicans did not have a message. Andy Beshear is popular, but he's still a Democrat in a red state. There was still margin for error for Dan Cameron here, right? Like, he's running a state that voted for Trump by 26 points. He's running on the same ballot as Russ Coleman, who's going to win by 18. Michael Adams is going to win by 21. So there were Republicans that showed up, and by and large, Kentucky is still a very red state. Now, Cameron, I think, did not run a good campaign. Obviously, he didn't have a lot of things going to his advantage, but let's talk about the things I think he did wrong. I think there are two key moments I can think of where Cameron really just did not make the right moves. I think he focused too much on the culture war. He was talking about gender, and back in August at Fancy Farm, which is a Kentucky political tradition, all the candidates go there and they make speeches, and it's kind of like an event. There's people there who cheer them on, they get booed. It's a really big thing. And Cameron went there, and he, it's kind of like a stand-up comedy thing, right? Like, it's not comedy, but, you're making jokes, you're making fun of your opponents, and, that happens every year. Dan Cameron does that with Beshear, and he says, our governor likes to talk a lot about gender. And that set the tone. This was in the summer. And then for the 3 months leading up to the election, what did he talk about? Gender, transgender athletes. Andy Beshear, is a liberal who has these views on transgender Americans that are out of step with the average Kentuckian. The problem for Cameron is maybe Kentuckians agree with him on the transgender issue, right? Like, that is a divisive issue where there are a lot of complicated viewpoints held by a lot of different people. I understand that. But it is very often not high on the average voter's list of priorities. The economy is more important. Education is more important. Abortion, in some cases, is more important, especially in this day and age. So I would say that for Cameron to look at this race and say, I'm going to attack Andy Beshear on an issue like transgender athletes or pronouns, I don't really think that's the way to win. I think that people may agree with him, but they just don't care enough. And so that brings me to my second point, which was Cameron didn't have an answer. Beshear, pressed him on education because the previous governor of Kentucky was a Republican. He lost partially because the education issue was really toxic to Republicans. The consensus in Kentucky back in 2019 when they lost the governorship was that the Republicans had done a bad job of handling the state's public schools. And that was a big part of how Andy Beshear won in the first place. And so Beshear pressed Cameron. He said, look, if we're going to vote Republicans back in, don't let yourself forget what happened last time. Cameron never had an answer to that. He also never had an answer to the abortion issue. Andy Beshear was pretty consistent. He was pro-abortion. He said, look, we're going to give people, women, the chance to make their own decisions. Cameron triangulated. I don't really think he had a clear answer. And at the end of the day, Kentucky's a state that, last November, about a year ago, midterms, abortion, they passed a ballot initiative that essentially enshrined the right to abort, not enshrined, but it kept abortion legal, and they passed it by 5%. How much is Andy Beshear winning right now by? 5%. So there is a coalition for Democrats in Kentucky. It's pro-choice. It's a state where I think people are open to voting for someone like Andy Beshear. And again, this is an impressive election result. It's by no means something that I think can be replicated by Joe Biden next year. He's going to lose Kentucky by a lot. But Beshear, I think, says a lot, and this victory says a lot about what we can expect in the future. So this is a bad result for Republicans. I really think they had a shot here in a red state. Beshear's a popular governor. It would have been a tough lift, but the fact that they're going to lose here by, it looks like upwards of 65,000, maybe when it's all said and done, 80, 90,000 votes, really disappointing for them because the last time they lost by 7,000, and it's really a different result this time here with Andy Beshear winning re-election. So I'll keep you posted. I'll be doing another video tomorrow going over all the results, talk about Mississippi, talk about Pennsylvania, Virginia, Ohio, etc. and I hope to see you there. So subscribe so you don't miss another or subscribe and hit that bell so you don't miss another video of mine. Again, let me know what you think, and I'll see you all in the next one.